Did it feel good to see that intro again. Hey guys, my name is Titan and dare I say it, welcome to this 25th episode of my Cities Skylines project Vedastein, and boy has it been such a long time since the last episode. Because, if you followed me on Twitter or Discord or wherever, you have seen that I had my that I had uni exams, and once they were done, everything seemed to be fine. But then, of course, I still lacked the assets for the Baroque Old Town and all that. But now, almost everything, is done, and we can continue. And it's great. It feels good. I'm feeling so motivated, and yeah, it can only go uphill from now. And actually, that's funny because uphill is the topic of this video, and that totally wasn't on purpose. That was just by accident that I made this connection there. So yeah, Today I want to start building the upper old town of Vedastein that I already started in the last episode, in the 24th episode, with the Bishoprical Palace of Vedastein. And today we really make the transition, we make the ascent, is that the real word for climbing that mountain? The ascent? I think so. Into the upper old town, the Baroque old town of Vedastein. And when I say this, you already see this is not the 25th episode as it is, but it is the 25th.1 episode of this series. The reason for that is that I started recording, and I recorded, and I built, and I whatever, and I noticed that I made so much stuff that I can't fit it all in one episode. And so for this episode here, we'll focus on the transition from the lower into the upper old town. We'll focus on the terraces that are on the cliffs of the upper old town. We focus on, so to say, we focus on climbing the mountain, let's call it like that. And in the next episode, in a week, we focus on the development of the upper old town, namely this mainly this big square here. And I think that's a pretty good decision I made there, because on the one side it means I have both both parts of development ready and have them done. But that also means by splitting this episode into 2 episodes that I can focus on each major point of this big topic in more detail. And so I think that's the right decision. Plus, that also means that the next episode in a week is guaranteed to be live in a week, because I basically already finished it when this video comes out. So it's a win-win situation, and also it gives me more time to finish some last assets I need. So it's a win-win-win situation if we see it like that. Now, enough of meta talk. Let us talk about what I'm doing here. So I started this episode by changing some roads or whatever, because when I made the road layout, I used the standard pavement roads, but in the meantime Gecko released these roads. These they are supposed to be Parisian roads, but I just see cobblestone roads, so that fits pretty well. And so I changed those roads. I also already plopped the first Baroque houses, the first new Baroque houses. I made more or less primarily for this old town, and you'll see that they fit pretty well. The first batch of those houses is already released, and all the other houses will come as time goes by. So don't worry, you'll have those houses in your game as well in just a bit more time. Another thing I did here is I used this mixed cobble network on the street where there is where there's parking spaces for cars, because I thought it's an interesting design choice to not have some lines on the cobblestone or whatever, but to have an actual visual distinction between the actual space for driving and space for parking the car. So I thought that's an interesting design choice, and yeah, it turned out pretty interesting. What I'm doing here is just still basically plopping the buildings. The whole area you'll see me doing here is what's to be the topic of the next episode, when we focus on detailing the big square in the Upper Old Town and also the backyards in the Upper Old Town, where I'm at least hoping you'll see that it's I try to make it quite interesting by using different techniques and different design elements than always the same. But more on that next week. And so there's not too much to see from the Upper Old Town, or from the center of the Upper Old Town in this episode. It might be that because of the way I had to cut the episode, that you'll see hints and small glimpses of the big square in the background sometimes, but the focus on this episode really is on the let's say on the terraces, on the transition, on the as I said, climbing the mountain from the lower into the Upper Old Town. And when I started making this episode and started building for this episode, I have to say I was a bit overwhelmed by what I had to do, namely working with this cliff, and it was quite a bit of trial and error and fiddling before I got the wheel workaround for here. All that trial and error and fiddling I didn't include into the video. I only included the final development, let's say. But as of now, as it looks now, to be honest, I'm so surprised by what I achieved there. So I really hope you'll like it. I at least really like what I achieved there. That's something I can say. And with these houses here right on the cliff, we actually start into the main topic of this episode. The first I did here is just plopping houses directly on the cliff so that they overlap the cliff. Because my thought was I really want the cliff not to be, I don't know, I didn't want the cliff to be visible as a cliff, but wanted the cliff to be inside the city, that the city grew despite the cliff being there. And so I put houses on it, so the cliff really got sort of incorporated into the city. And I think that really turned out interesting. Maybe that's something you might also try in your city. Because again, working with terrain elevations like these is it is difficult to say the least, but the end result always looks amazing. So what I did is just plopping houses so that they overlap the cliff, and here in that case I even put another facade onto the back side of the building, so that it just gives an interesting look. Because if you have a building on such a high cliff, why not using the backside for another representative facade? If you're some rich dude that built his Baroque mansion there. But that's not the only thing I used here. You see me plopping this. As of now, it's just a network of walls. In the end, it'll be a sort of an outside area for a hotel, because I thought we have this big green corner building with windows on 3 sides. It would be a perfect spot for a fancy hotel, especially given the view you have from that building over the whole old town. And so I thought, why not using some sort of terrace next to the building connected by a small bridge as an outside area for the hotel. You'll see more of that later. And again, it gives some variation. It's not only backyards on next to buildings, but also some hotel areas here with pool and you'll see later what I mean. And here here I decided to have stairs, basically. It's just something that you really often see in old towns that have really steep or really strong terrain differences, that there are not only roads or paths leading up the hill, but also stairs. And so I also wanted to include that here. And as it's me, well, of course I wanted the stairs to be functional, so I put a pedestrian path on it, which was, it took me like an hour or so to make it look good, but the end result, well, I think it was worth it, let's say it like that. And another thing I'm just doing right here is placing a second row of buildings behind this first row of buildings. For that I'm using PO just so I can, I can put it in position a bit better, and to have some back entrances onto the terraces, and making the buildings look larger. I think that's what you might call it. And that also, I think, turned out pretty interesting. Here's another design choice I used, and that's just some foundations for the terraces, some supports for the terraces with the seawalls by Amesto. I used there on the bottom of this terrace structure, something that gives it a bit more of an authentic look, because if you have some sort of retaining wall that is 15 meters probably, that is 15 meters high, that wall by itself wouldn't stand a chance against the dirt or even rocks that is behind it, that it's retaining. And so you need some better support for this wall, and that is why I used this seawall there. And I think it's just a very small detail in the game, but it makes so much for a more authentic look of the city that I think that was a very interesting design choice. Here, I'm just having a small stair or platform for the entrance because the door flies in the air. Just some tiny detail that I'm, to be honest, not quite satisfied with, but it's okay. Let's say I can live with that. Feel free to write your comments about all those tiny, more or less good details in the comment section. I'm really eager to hear or to read what you say about the topic of this episode and the way I made all those terraces and all that. For this cliff area here, I'm just copying the technique I used earlier in another episode, and that is just retaining walls with some ploppable grass on top of them, because these terraced backyard gardens or whatever give a really interesting they make it look more interesting instead of just cliffs with trees on top or something like that. So again, I copied that solution here, but as you see, I am. Last time I used this technique, I got quite a lot of comments that, oh, there should be fences and da-da-da-dum. And yes, you're right. I don't know why I forgot to plop some fences on these terraces, but here I plopped some fences. And yes, in the end, just using some fences by itself makes it look more authentic, more realistic. That's the whole theme we're having for this city anyway. And of course you'll see it, or you are seeing it throughout the episode. PO is my best friend in this episode, and I guess in this whole project, because it allows for so much customization that wouldn't be possible otherwise, and I certainly love that mod. And of course I'm also using that mod just to get around the prop limit, to not use too many props, but instead transferring quite a lot of props into POs, just so we can work in the city much longer. And here again, terraces. So yeah, this whole episode really is under the main topic of working with the cliffs, in brackets, terraces, because I'm using terraces all over the place here, but I think that really gives a very interesting look. And when you look at old towns that have some cliffs in them, like for example in the old town of Český Krumlov in Czechia, or the old town of Salzburg in Austria, there also are they also have some terrace structures, and yeah, so I'm using it here, and it allows for a really interesting look and makes this cliff a real eye catcher that is more interesting than just a bare cliff. And here's just a tiny thing I used, because the map theme texture looked a bit weird being stretched like that, so I just used these mossy stones that are terrain conforming to get a bit of a better cliff texture here. And to be honest, I think that turned out pretty well, and you'll see me doing that in the next episode again. Here again I'm using these sea walls as a better support for the retaining wall, and yeah, it really makes it all look more realistic by using that, especially as these sea walls with their stains add a bit more grunge to these to this wall, and make it look more, well, basically make it look older. So, and yeah, so that's an interesting design choice, I think. And here is, as I said, this hotel area, this hotel outside area, where we decided to have a pool and a few, deck chairs, and yes. So for this, again, this terrace, I thought that this used to be some sort of a small Baroque garden belonging to the green building next to it, that it's connected to via a bridge. And to sort of justify that today it's not a Baroque garden, but it's a pool area basically. I thought sometime in the 19th century basically, this Baroque garden got a bit neglected and got run down, overgrown, and then the hotel was founded and the old Baroque garden got completely demolished and the pool area was established. So just to justify why there is a pool area on that spot. But all in all, I think that turned out pretty interesting. And if you imagine having or being in that hotel and having that pool area, and after that chilling on the deck chair there with the whole old town beneath you and beneath your feet, I think that's would be a really nice spot for such an area. And so yeah, I think that by itself is enough justification to use it like that here. And here it's basically my standard procedure for backyards, even though those backyards here are on these terraces, but besides that it's some sort of brick or tile decal, a table, an umbrella, and a grill and some plants and washing lines. It's always the same for my backyards because that's how backyards look basically. And so I use the same technique here on these terraces, which again gives an pretty authentic look, and so I'm satisfied with it. Even though due to these terraces it was quite a bit annoying to plop all these, be it POs or props, doesn't matter, plop all these tiny assets there. As you see here, it was quite a bit of fiddling because of the height of everything. But it's the end result that counts, not the way towards the end result. And so, yes. And in just a few seconds you'll see with the greenhouse I used a sort of a different approach to this, because I here always add table, umbrella, washing lines, whatever. But for this green hotel building I thought I want to use something different. So I used these pergola structures and plopped them onto the terrace. Then of course having tables underneath the pergola, so this would be the outside area of the restaurant of the hotel again, which I think is a pretty nice spot for this restaurant. But the interesting thing here, or I think the interesting thing, is having this whole outside area overgrown with some vines and ivy, which again you see very often in old towns, that old structures are overgrown, which gives this typical romantic view of such old stuff with overgrown with ivy and everything. And again, turned out pretty nice. If you like this technique, feel free to copy it, of course. After all, that's basically what these videos are for, making something and give inspiration to others. And for the rest of this episode now, it's basically just backyard detailing, as I am doing it for quite some time now, and I will be doing so for quite some time again, because once you started to detail every fucking single backyard, you sort of have to continue with that technique, because otherwise it would look weird to have backyards detailed and in some cases not. And so maybe be aware of that. If you wanna go crazy like I am and detail every backyard, you really have to detail every backyard, because otherwise it always will look weird. But the good thing is the end result will always look great with detailed backyards like that, so I think that's worth it. But as the rest of the episode is just the same backyard detailing, which you already know from many episodes, and I already commented on that quite a lot of times, I think I can justify wrapping this episode up already. Of course, there will be cinematics at the end of this episode, but those cinematics will focus on the terraces and all that we did in this episode, and in next episode we'll cover the second part of the 25th episode, to be honest, with the big square and all that you just saw a glimpse of that. But so that's it for that episode from my side. At least there are still a few minutes for you to enjoy. If you like this episode, please leave comments and give some critique if you don't like something. I really read and appreciate all these comments and also the critique. As you saw, I got critique for the fences not being there on these terraces and how I added them. So yes, I really thank you for watching this episode, and be back with me for Vedastein. I promise you, episodes will be on a more regular basis from now on, at least till the next exam period. Maybe I'm finding some way to avoid another multiple months of emptiness, but yeah. So if you like this episode, feel free to comment and like it. And then again, if you don't want to miss any future videos, please subscribe to my channel and hit the tiny little bell icon to get notified whenever I upload a new video. If you really want to support me, of course you can support me on Patreon, as so many great people already do. Guys, you are amazing and I love you for that. And then, yes, that's it for this episode from my side. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode in a week. Until then, have a nice time, take care, and bye.